Welcome to the Badlands, a place I don't think I or anyone I'm going to talk to expected to be. My name is Jared, and for the last 9 months, I've been an out-of-work ad agency senior suit. My last role was the Regional Client Service Director at Grey Singapore, delivering work around Southeast Asia and India. I returned to London last year, fully imagining I'd been in another agency fairly quickly, as had been the case over the last 2 decades, but not so much this time. So I found myself wandering the Badlands. In these 9 months, I've noticed a few odd things in our industry, and I've also noticed a surprising amount of ex-colleagues and clients all in a similar position to me. So I thought it might be helpful and maybe interesting to talk to some of these people, to see how they're doing, discover their experiences, understand what they're looking for, and maybe shine a light on them and their talents, but most importantly, check in with them, as it's a lonely experience being in the Badlands. So please welcome Lucas Bergmans. Lucas is an experienced CMO, previously at Cazoo, Aviva, Pepsi, Heineken, just to name a few little brands. But like many others from the marketing agency world, he finds himself in the Badlands. I was first introduced to Lucas via a mutual friend and colleague who told me to check out a LinkedIn post of his where he shared his job search experiences, which I felt at the time was super representative of my own and a lot of people in a similar position to us. So today we'll discuss that, his views on the market and the state of the industry, along with some tips and advice that he has for others in the Badlands. So please welcome Lucas Bergmans. Lucas, how are you?
Hey, Jared. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty all right. I mean, I think we'll get into the emotional roller coaster of job searching, but I think right now I'm feeling on the up. I'm
Yeah.
feeling generally very positive, so I'm having a good week.
I've noticed my mood is largely determined by the weather at the moment. If it's nice outside, I'm all right. I feel good about it. If it's shitty, then yeah, I can really go into a bit of a down day. So
Yeah, similar, which is really unhelpful because we can't control the weather.
no, and it feels like we can't control our own destinies at the moment, which is, I guess, a big part of this whole conversations I'm having with people. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time out to speak to me. As I mentioned, I was put on to you by a mutual friend and I think ex-colleague of yours who told me about this amazing, insightful post that you'd put out on LinkedIn. But I think before we get into that, for my millions of listeners, Lucas, see, I joke
Yes,
about it, but one day there will be millions of listeners. I'm just
fantastic.
manifesting it.
Yeah,
I think if you can give everyone your kind of career summary for those listening, just so they can put it in front of people if it helps.
yes. Well, I've had lots of practice with this with various issues I've
Yeah.
had over the last year or so. So yeah, I'm Lucas. I've been in client side marketing for I think about 23 years. First half was all in FMCG, so I was on the L'Oreal grad scheme for my sins. I think we mutually decided it wasn't a great fit, so I left after 12 months. I even had hair then. And then really got my proper kind of first experience of brand management at General Mills. So my first brand that I worked on was Old El Paso, which I still have a fond soft spot for. Also worked on Old El Paso and Haagen-Dazs. Oh, sorry, Green Giant and Haagen-Dazs. Then I spent 6 years at Heineken, working on premium lager, so Heineken, Kronenberg, things like that, which is great fun. And then about 4 years at Britvic Soft Drinks, primarily working on Pepsi, which is also great fun. And then I figured I'd kind of covered all bases in FMCG and pivoted into digital. So about 8-9 years ago, I went to Money Supermarkets. I worked on Travel Supermarket and Money Supermarket for a couple of years. And then I had just under 2 years at Aviva in the world of insurance and pensions. And then my last gig was Cazoo. So I joined in the first 15 or so people right at the start with a kind of blank sheet of paper and very quickly grew a big business and a big brand that sadly didn't last. But it was an amazing experience, great people, and great to do something complete from scratch. So that was great fun. And now, yeah, in the Badlands, as you say.
Yeah, and it's well. Thank you for that. It's super impressive. Obviously, you don't need me to tell you that. It's funny listening to it. It sounds like you're the brands and things have kind of coincided with your age as you grow up. You kind of get in, you start doing insurance when you're a little bit older. Now it's
Yeah,
cars. As at first it was all ice cream and fun and like.
yeah, yeah.
My journey is quite similar in the ad world. I was
Got
doing
it.
shaving and hair care in the last couple of years, which
God.
as boring and as serious as you can get. But
Yeah,
so look, I know you've been in the Badlands for a while. I'm sure we'll come to that in a second. And you touched on your last role, Cazoo, and I've seen you kind of defend it a little bit on LinkedIn, but I
sure.
assume I think you were made redundant. Is it's all folded? Like how come you're in the Badlands? Because clearly, with someone
Yeah,
with
so
your variety of
yeah.
marketing skills, you should be walking into something immediately, in my opinion.
Yes, in mine too. But yes, I mean, the Kazoo story in brief is, we grew extremely quickly, VC backed, and very much growing top line revenue while still being a loss making business. And then IPO'd in New York in kind of 2021 as a SPAC. Without going into the detail, what that means is basically a shortcut to becoming a listed business when you're probably not ready to. And
Right.
I think it's been banned by now. But in short, along with a lot of similar kind of tech startups, valuation just went through the floor as soon as interest rates and
Right.
inflation jumped in early 2022. So we were losing quite a lot of money, and our share price dropped, I think, 99% through 2022. We couldn't raise any more money, so we just cut and cut and cut. We had launched in Europe in 4 markets, which was a lot of fun, but not sustainable. So we pulled out that within 12 months. And as in a lot of jobs I've done, I get asked to kind of look at my uncommitted spend for the rest of the year and send through for to my boss for a kind of suggestion of what might be cut. But actually, for the first time ever, he cut 100%. So that was quite a shock. And
Yeah. Yeah.
then in return, gave me my P45. So yeah, no need for a kind of a group marketing director when there's no budget and half the size of teams. So I left at the end of 2022. Um, but in truth, through all of last year, most of the senior management that joined in the first few months left as well. And since then, obviously they've not managed to get to break even and make it work. So sadly, a lot of my colleagues really in the last couple of days are now actively looking for their roles as well. But
Really cool.
great experience, no regrets for me. Had an amazing time and got to work with some amazing people.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of the people I'm speaking to at the moment, effort and a lot of it is circumstantial. The correction of markets, or like you say, some mergers, and or in your case, some lessons learned along the way, which I think is part of your career, right? You kind of learn these things, and you'll now take a lot of those learnings, if not all of them, to your next role.
Yeah,
But it's yeah,
100%.
it's
Yeah,
so
definitely.
in terms of, I think I touched on it twice now, and I usually at this point ask people about their kind of experience in the Badlands, kind of, because I think a lot of people for the first time in their careers are finding themselves looking around for the first time and not seeing
Yeah,
anything that is applicable, or is pitched right at a monetary
yeah,
level or a title level. And I had a
yeah,
conversation yesterday, and we touched on kind of title inflation versus salary deflation that seems to be the norm at the
yeah,
moment. And I think if you could, I think your post that you made on LinkedIn, it just, when I read it, I was like, fuck, I'm sure I could replicate that from my own point of view. Do you know what I mean? Like there's such similarity, that kind of arc that you've gone through. So I think for those
yeah.
millions that hadn't seen it, it might be a good way of you
I
summarizing
mean,
your kind of most recent experiences in looking in this market, which is horrendous at the
yeah,
moment.
yeah, it is. So I guess just take it from the start. So I've been, if I'm honest, I've been out of work for 18 months now, which is at least double what I expected it to be. I think starting January 2022, when I kind of started into the Badlands, I was quite lucky in a couple of respects. Firstly, I actually it wasn't my first rodeo, so I was out of work between Money Supermarket and Aviva. And I think that was kind of a bit of baptism of fire to kind of realise, you get to a certain level of seniority, it just does take an awful long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And I was kind of still effectively transitioning between two different sectors. I didn't want to go back to FMCG. I wanted to stay in kind of digital businesses, but very much a square peg in a round hole, which doesn't work for a lot of recruiters. They kind of really struggle with that. But kind of worked out the hard way that actually networking is really the way you need to go. And, exec search firms and headhunters have a role to play, but even the good ones will tell you most jobs don't come through them. You need to really work your network. So I've come into touch with people recently who have been in the same company for 20, 30 years, and then they're out in the jobs market for the first time. So I'm quite grateful that I have had the experience of going through it before. But I expected it to take 9 months, not 18 plus.
Wow.
So that's been a bit of a shock. I mean, a couple of really key things for me. Actually, first off, I did a LinkedIn post 5 years ago when I was out of work, so kind of top tips on how to find a job when you're out of work. So I just dusted that off and reposted it with some extra tips. One of the best tips I had, so from my HR director, Simon, at Cazoo, as he handed my P45 over, also recommended a book called Never Search Alone, which I recommend to anyone who's in the job search at the moment. It's by a guy called Phil Terry, based out of Silicon Valley. So originally written for kind of product development guys and girls, but relevant for all kinds of jobs in all different countries. And the basic premise of that is that it's a really lonely existence, a real emotional roller coaster. The best thing to do is to do it with a small group of people that are in the same boat. So I set up early in January last year a job seekers council, and ideally you want between 4 and 6 people that are similar level seniority, similar kind of industry, all out of work at the same time. Ideally people that don't know each other as well, so kind of relative strangers. So I funnily enough, wasn't hard to find. A group of 5 of us, and we spoke every week. You kind of go through some kind of simple templates on how to identify what's called your candidate market fit. So what's your ideal job look like? How can you target the market and find those kind of roles? Obviously, it hasn't actually worked that well for me in terms of getting a job, but as a kind of support network's been fantastic.
I thought you were going to say the other 4 have all got jobs really quickly.
Well, well, not quickly. I mean, everyone struggles. I think I'm still technically the one to start at work, but they've done really well, and they all owe me lunch. So
yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like you're the best mentor to me.
Exactly. But I recommend that book to anyone that's in this boat. It's super helpful, really easy to read, and they've
I'll
actually
put a post to it. Yeah,
with
I'll link to it for sure.
check it out. So that was good. And then kind of fast forward to all of last year, I did a bunch of interviews here and there, everywhere. If I look at any one of them, probably not really any that I was, to be honest, super gutted that I didn't get. The usual being pissed about and ghosted along the way. But I probably haven't been done through this before. Probably had quite low expectations in the first place. So as much as it's a real kick in the nuts when it happens, I wasn't hugely surprised that it would happen at some point in some way. So where I kind of sent that post out a few weeks ago was just really since Easter of this year, I've just sensed a kind of real pickup in the market in broad terms, just purely based on my own direct experience. So I probably from about November last year till Easter, literally nothing coming through on the perm side, and actually really try to focus in on trying to land some freelance work and fractional work. But actually since Easter, just things have picked up. I was, in total, at one point I had about 10 different kind of live leads. And really all the point of that post was to kind of highlight that, just a kind of element of positivity that, things are improving. Last year was an absolute shit show. There are kind of good signs in the economy, and that seems to be initially translating into some good jobs roles coming through. But just the kind of the types of jobs and where they came from was so broad, just really highlighted the point that you just need to really push yourself out there. Whether that's LinkedIn, whether that's through your network, whether that's through a large range of different headhunters that you've been in touch with. Like if you want to get in a position to be in danger of getting hired, it's a really competitive market. You need to be out there all the time. You need to be kind of networking like crazy, talking to every single headhunter you can find, pushing your own profile on LinkedIn, which is kind of partly why I was doing that as well. And be open to lots of different opportunities, whether that's interim, fractional, permanent. You've just got to really, really push and just really be open minded as to what you want to do, because it might not be a long term commitment necessarily. You are going to be better off doing something rather than doing nothing and sitting at home waiting for someone to call you up.
Yeah, look, excuse me. I just realised I'm supposed to be on this chatting with you, but I was listening because it's just so true. I think everyone goes through that arc that you're discussing there, and equally, I've just published a new episode today as
Yeah,
we're recording this with a recruiter from one of from major players, and she came on to kind of give a little bit of hope to the both the ad world and the marketing world, because they're starting to see a little bit of movement. They're starting to see more briefs coming in. Still with, we need 10 out of 10 check boxes checked. There
yeah,
still might be a little risk averse and things, but
yeah,
I think I obviously encourage everyone to go and listen to it. But she really broke down from a data points point of view the feeling I'd had, and the feeling that a lot of people had had when I've spoken to them, that last year was a shit show, as you put it. She
yeah,
confirmed that just from her own internal data sources, from I guess appointments and things like that, and even briefs to begin with. But she did confirm that this year, Q2 onwards, has been as slowly the wheels might be turning slowly again. And I think probably the announcement of the election is going to start to change some behavioral, maybe some kind of confidence levels in consumers, which then translates to brands from a need state, and to see uptick in their products and things. And it's all related, right? And one of the things that I struggled with at the back end of last year and then kind of got over was this idea that you think it's you. And to a degree, you're
no, yeah,
responsible for your own thing, but it's compounded with there's so many factors at play at the moment that it's good
and
to hear from the likes of.
yeah,
Sorry, I was just going
and
to say it's great for people to hear from the likes of you, Lucas, and a CEO that I just recorded with this week who's had a similar sort of story, and for everyone to then understand that there are larger things at play here, and you can then do the things that you've just touched on: network, hustle, kind of diversifying yourself a little bit, be open to different things that you might not necessarily have thought you'd been open to a couple of years ago. It's all part of playing this particular game that we're playing at the moment, and
it is.
it's super important.
In a weird way, it's like reassuring to know that it's the market and it's not you, and it really is. Certainly all through last year, depending on who you talk to, something like 25, 30 years since it was anything like this bad,
Is that right?
particularly for marketing and advertising senior level roles. All of it really driven by inflation and all the kind of hangover of kind of COVID and a big internet bubble, effectively. So there's big market factors at play that you just can't control, sadly. But that is kind of reassuring, and it's not going to last forever. And I think it's good signs that things are heading in the right direction, and the worst is behind you. But I think, and again, because I've kind of been through this before, you've got to control what you can control, and actually, in a weird way, you've got a window of opportunity to do some stuff and think about stuff that you don't have if you're in a full-time job and you're fully at it and you're doing other things. So there are some upsides. It doesn't feel like it at the time. Obviously, money is always kind of at the back of your mind. You know where the next paycheck's going to come from.
Yeah.
That's the big one. But then, kind of aside from that, it's a great opportunity to build your network, to try different things, to really think about what you want to do long term. Because people at our age, I'm sure, are probably going to be working for another 20 years. You don't often get the time to really think about what that might look like and talk to people that can help you understand that. yeah, it's there. It's painful. It's not a great time, but actually there's definite upsides, and you got to make the most of it. Um, and
Yeah, I
it's
think
not you most likely.
no, I couldn't agree more. My if my mortgage provider was comfortable knowing that it's the market and not me, and I had
Yeah,
to just give me a little bit of time,
yeah,
I actually there are some genuine little upsides, and they're weird little upsides, and they'll only become apparent afterwards that they were
yeah,
good upsides, which you do have time to think about what you want to do for the next 20, 25 years.
yeah,
It's like from a longevity point of view, how sustainable is the career that I was on in the first place and things like that. Because when you're in the thick of it, when you are working, we all know it's full on and it takes a lot out of you during the week. And so having this time now to just kind of have a look around is one of the things that's
yeah,
slightly interesting, even though it's forced and it feels scary and it's not that comfortable. But you do start to see some things differently. And on the network front, they I couldn't agree more. And the, the book you described and the kind of little group of people that I think that book talks about, and you've taken to heart and created
yeah.
your own kind of counsel on. Inadvertently, I've kind of done that myself, and it does make a huge difference. It's
It
like
does. It does.
this Badlands thing started because I was having conversations with people I knew, and I was like, well, it's nice to have that chat. And then
Yeah,
we kind of help each other. And I'd literally sent stuff, hey, I've seen this thing, you should go for it. You just start
yeah,
to do that, and that gets reciprocal. So all of a sudden, you're not looking by yourself. You
yeah,
are in a little bit of a team. It's a team sport that we all play at work, right? We're all reliant on our colleagues and our team members to kind of get through whatever the tasks and the deliverables are that day. And I
yeah.
think I think the job hunt thing, it does benefit from that. And as I used to be quite a loyal recruiter guy, and now I'm just a mercenary. Any recruiter that wants to help, it's like, yeah, come and help. So I think
Yeah, I think so. Because I mean, the thing you've got to remember, something on the client side is a client that's looking for a CMO marketing director will appoint one exec search firm and only one. So,
yeah, yeah,
and obviously they will go and look for candidates. They don't necessarily just look at people they've spoken to before. But if you are already on their list of someone they've spoken to and they're aware of, then you're going to be front of the queue. So, but you need to spread yourself to as many of them as possible.
well,
And some are more responsive than others, but you just need to get out there and you need to just speak to all of them, unless they're completely irrelevant to what your sector you're in and what kind of thing you do. But don't think you got to speak to three or four and that's enough. I've got a
no,
spreadsheet with 60 on them now.
I mean,
Um,
I jokingly told my wife the other day that my job hunting strategy is very reminiscent of my dating strategy back in the day. I'm putting myself out there far and wide and seeing what sticks. It's like
mm,
I'm going out there as much as you can, because I think I think it's the way to go at the moment, more so than previous years when you would just put out your call and let your recruiters know you'd be interested in other things and they'd come back. And
yeah.
those days have long gone. So
Long gone. I mean, I think even last time I was looking 7, 8 years ago, it wasn't really like that. So my last two jobs I've got through network. And so I haven't got a job through a formal interview process for over 10 years, probably.
right,
I got my job at Aviva, so that's a big FTSE financial services
yeah,
company, through a couple of conversations through a network. And then I was in on an interim basis and I got a permanent job.
wow,
No
yeah,
interview, really. A couple of nice chats. Cazoo I got in because it's my previous boss from Money Supermarket was appointed and just asked me to join. That was it, straight in. That was very lucky, to be fair, but then that's what a lot of jobs do come that way.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, serendipity. I talked about on another podcast episode with someone how it is the most uncontrollable thing, but it's a vital part of this for sure. Look, being in
that's
the right
kind of
place.
that's quite liberating, quite nice in a way, because it just means you've got a bit of a purpose in the time you've got, rather than just you're on the back foot waiting for people to call. You just get out there, meet as many people as possible. You just never know what's going to happen.
No,
Um, what also I think is good to do is work out, the ideal thing is to get in front of a hiring manager before they even know they've got a job. I think there's a kind of temptation just to wait for a formal job description to come through and the rest of it. Actually, a lot of recruitment doesn't really happen like that. You've almost got to create the need, and find out the companies where you really want to work for them. You think you've got a lot of value to add, and you've just got the best bit of advice I got from one headhunter was like, you've got to hustle, which is a kind of very non-British thing to do, but
Yeah,
like
it is.
just find these CEOs' email, send them a message, ask them for a meeting. So Octopus Energy, I think, is an amazing company. I thought, leader Greg Jackson's super interesting guy. Why don't I just contact him on LinkedIn? His LinkedIn profile even says at the very top, "Please don't message me. I don't answer to any emails." It's like, you know what?
Oh, he's begging to
I'm
be.
just,
He's begging
yeah,
to
I
be.
just, I just did it anyway. I got a response back from his PA in an hour, and then got a meeting with their head of talent. And obviously, I haven't got a job at Octopus Energy, but then that was one of a handful of businesses on my list of companies I want to work for, and I kind of got a couple of conversations with the head of talent because I reached out to their CEO on LinkedIn.
Yeah, look,
Not all businesses are like that, but there are ways for you to network into any business you want, really.
and I think it's been aggressive is the wrong word. It's been just like forthright. I'm hungry. I want to do something, and not being afraid of it. I've had a couple of conversations where I've ended up then trying to tell these people, like, no, bollocks to that. Like, you've got to change your LinkedIn banner. You've got to let people know you're out of work. You can't hide. There's no one's magically walking around going, "Does anyone need a job?" It's just not happening these days. So I think
No.
you've got to go the other way a little bit.
And look, if you're not doing it, someone else who's just as
Yeah,
qualified as you is. So it's very competitive, and there's really no downside.
no,
It feels a bit awkward because we're kind of a bit reserved and British and the rest of it, but
yeah,
you've just that's the way forward. You've got to hustle.
yeah. I couldn't agree more. And it like I say, ask for forgiveness, not permission, is a
Yep.
good way of just get on with it. And if someone doesn't want to speak to you, you'll find out. But
Yep.
you never know until you ask,
My,
right? So
my my dad's got lots of kind of awesome pithy expressions. He's Dutch, I should
dads do,
mention.
right?
Not all of them translate that well, but one of my favourites is, "You have no, you can get yes." So if you're not
Oh,
asking for anyone for anything, it's already no, right? Because
all
you're not
right.
even asking a question. You can still get yes, but you're
Yeah,
only going to
exactly.
get that if you go and ask for it.
Yeah, you're no
Um,
worse off today by not asking. You just by not doing anything, it's not going to change. So, yeah, that's clearly come up in a lot of my conversations. Being on the front foot and getting out there, which you clearly are. It
yeah.
feels strange to ask you, but do you have like an ideal role or sector? That is there anything like where you're like, I fucking love to go and do that, because you never know who's listening, Lucas. Out of my millions of
Well,
listeners, and
out
given
of
the
a million.
nature of
Yeah.
the
So what
penetration of this podcast, you know,
if you read Never Search Alone, you'll kind of work out that one of the first things you do is then identify the kind of what makes you a perfect company, your perfect role. Um, and for me, it's mostly everything that kind of happened at Cazoo, maybe with a bit more financial stability. But what I
yeah,
loved about that, it was really clear um, ambition and vision, really exciting journey, strong leadership, great kind of standard of people that you're surrounded with, and pretty fast paced. And I'm not really, I've worked in lots of different sectors that we've kind of talked about before. I actually quite like getting stuck into something completely new that I don't know anything about. I didn't know
yeah,
anything
me
about
too.
the car industry 5 years ago, didn't know anything about insurance when I started at Money Supermarket. Um, and I think actually that's great for me. I'm being super open minded. I mean, I've interviewed for a luxury watch D2C business. I've interviewed for a couple of the neo banks, digital banks. I've interviewed for energy companies. Interviewed for a couple of car kind of based companies. So I'm quite open minded about which sector. I think for me, it's probably got to be mass market consumer typically, and I think the kind of phrase I keep coming back to is it's got to be have a meaningful role for customers. And I guess you could define that anyway, but I think for me, because it was quite meaningful, buying a car is a big outlay.
Yeah, yeah,
Choosing the right car that you're going to use every day is a really big deal, and the customer experience for a lot of people is just crap. So actually, we had a lot
And
of
terrifying, like you say, it's sort of short of the house that you buy. It tends to be the most
yeah,
expensive thing you go and spend money on, and it can be quite daunting. So,
exactly that.
um,
So I think ideal thing for me, I do love those kind of brands in the kind of digital neobank space. I think they're all quite interesting space. They're all kind of gunning for scale up, really in a stage where they can start taking chunks out of the high street banks and all about to kind of IPO. So Starling Bank would be a great one. Monzo, I guess, as well. So those kind of brands I think are super interesting. Anything to do with energy, I think is really interesting, but very complicated and quite heavily
yeah.
regulated. So that could
But,
be interesting.
but
Yeah,
you worked in alcohol for a long time, which I did. I was at the other side of the fence and did a lot of
yeah.
alcohol advertising, and that's one of the most regulated industries from an advertising point of view in terms of
Well, it is
code.
and it isn't because it's not the government regulating it, and it's
I
kind of
guess
policed by the industry. Actually, outside of the UK, it's really heavily
yeah,
regulated.
it's France is a nightmare apparently.
France and I, but Russia apparently as well. So, not that you want to work there anyway.
No, no, I'm open to offers, but yeah, I've got a couple of hard no's, and that might be one
Yeah,
of them at the moment.
not Russia.
Well, look, I think I usually ask people kind of shout out to any heroes because, like you say, it's a team sport, and I think it's vital for people to know that you've got to lean on people at this time and not to feel bad about it. It could be your family member, it could be, like you say, a couple of ex-colleagues that are in a similar position. I guess you've got those. I take it, Lucas, and
Yeah,
I just
sure. I
think if
mean,
you could give the importance of that.
at the risk of turning to an Oscar acceptance speech, I mean, far too many people to
Yeah,
to mention individually because there's loads of people have been hugely helpful. But I guess first and foremost, my wife has been very supportive and kind of putting up with my wild mood swings and just being in the
yeah,
house far too often and making a
yeah,
mess of the place. So couldn't have got through any of it without her. I just kind of in the broader world of work, I think there are a handful of people that are, um, have been particularly helpful for me where actually on paper they really don't have to. So particularly when you kind of sometimes you sign up to industry events or you get invited to stuff and they don't quite realise that you're actually not at Cazoo anymore.
right.
Um, and you say, by the way, I'm not there anymore. Do you still want me there? It's surprising how many times people say, actually, no. Because funnily enough, you're only there so they can kind of sell tickets to agencies that want to get your business. But
Of
it's the
course.
it's the people that say, actually, no, that's great. We just want interesting
Yeah,
people there,
yeah, yeah.
and
Well,
actually we want to
people, right?
support you for the long term. So Richard Robinson, who's ex Oyster Catchers, has been very active for me and lots of other people, and just helping what he calls in betweeners. So he's a
Yeah,
bit
that's
of
nice.
a legend out there, and then particularly a couple of people I've used to work with. So Alan Cairns, who was the chief people officer at Money Supermarkets, now at Go Cardless, has kind of really helped me a couple of times. Actually, kind of the best pieces of advice he gave me right at the early stages of the Badlands for me was to kind of you got to build your personal brand on LinkedIn. So
Yeah,
in as much as that's idea kind of made my skin crawl slightly to start with. Actually, I've really
yeah.
got stuck into that and done a lot of content on LinkedIn and kind of worked out how that works. And I think that's a good thing for people to really think about. I've now got a blog, which I probably should plug at this point, called Notes from
Please.
the Rocket Ship, which I've built up to about 1,100 different subscribers. And by the way, it's a very good way to network. People love to talk about themselves. So invite
This
them
is what
to
I'm finding on these
unsubscribe.
podcasts. I can't let people talk. I'm like, let me tell you about me. I'm like, my wife was like, "Will you shut the fuck up on these episodes? Let people talk." I'm like, "All right, darling."
I
She's got
understand.
a
But
point.
you should come onto my blog as well, Jared. And then also Chris Clark, who used to be, I think still is, the non-exec director at Aviva, was ex CMO of HSBC, has been hugely helpful. And like a bunch of others, and I probably won't do for the millions of people listening. Apologies if
No,
you're
no,
one of
no.
the people that have helped me, but too many to mention
Yeah,
individually by name. I mean, I think one of the really great things hot tip for particularly for a client side marketer is anyone who's worked in an agency you've worked with before will probably take you out for lunch at least once for free. So we're quite nice.
right.
So I'm probably up in the kind of 15, 20 free
Nice.
lunches
Yeah. That's
last
good.
18
Because
months.
they're not stupid, Lucas. Clearly, you're going to be working somewhere amazing soon, and then they'll all be coming back for the. Hey,
Yes,
remember we had lunch that time? Can I
I know.
speak to you
No,
about
no
that?
such thing as a free lunch. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'll be inundated with
No,
calls
for
when I.
sure. It occurred to me that I'm developing quite the little black book of people who are going to be in both the agency side and the marketing world. And
Yes,
yeah, it's
which
going to
is
be
great.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it goes back to what you were saying, like the changing your network and growing your network and being open to different discussions with people.
100%.
It's brought me back out of just thinking this was all fucked. I'm personally enjoying my time in the way I'm developing my own brand and kind of doing these episodes is cathartic
Yeah.
and it's there's a altruism attached to it. I genuinely am trying to help these people and
But I think all
help in
those
the
kind of
sense
things,
of
yeah, all
just
those kind of things are things you'll carry on doing after you're in an amazing job. I think.
you know what
So you're planning to.
I promised my gorgeous wife, who is super supportive, that regardless if I started somewhere tomorrow, I'd still be doing these. I'll still carve out time to do
Good.
these because I think it's vital and it's super
Yeah.
important. I've had horror stories from a few folk around their personal situation. Some people are in a luckier or a more fortunate position where they
Yeah.
can handle the time a little bit better than others. And I think
100%.
one of the things I kind of pushed on the recruiter yesterday was that there's humans attached to this, right? With the people attached to this downturn and this seemingly endless kind of doldrum period of inactivity in the markets. And it's easy to be told just hang in there till 2025, and you're like, well, that's fucking 7 months away. It's like,
No,
can you call
it's
my
true.
bank and tell them,
Yeah.
I've got to hang in there. So I think
Yeah.
it's I like having the human connection with the people I'm speaking to, and
No, it helps a great deal, even if it doesn't magically give you a job next week. Just the reassurance that there's plenty of other people in the same boat. It's a market issue. It's not a you issue. If any other year, you would have been in your job within 6 to 9 months,
yeah, no, for
and
sure.
it won't last forever. This too shall pass, as they say.
Yeah, finally, on a conversation I had earlier in the week with as senior as it gets agency leader, we talked about the pendulum, it's all circular. It comes back around, and it doesn't feel like it when you're in the middle of it, but yeah, it certainly will do. So, look,
Well,
I
but
think
it's a period of time where you are forced to actually question whether is that definitely what you want to do anyway, either in the short term or the long term. You don't get the time to sit back and think about it, and actually, you might realise there's something completely different what you want to do, and you've got you've got the time now to properly think that through. May even start retraining in a way that you wouldn't have if you were in a full-time 24/7 job.
no, I couldn't agree more. And one of my when I was planning these things in the early days, one of my questions was going to be how soon was it you thought maybe I should become a school teacher? Because that happened to me really quickly.
Yeah.
Until my wife and every single friend I had and some ex-colleagues went, "That's a terrible idea. You'd be terrible." I was like, "All right, well, I was just thinking of a thing
I
I could
saw
go
a
do."
I saw a screenshot of someone's LinkedIn profile that had kind of, I don't know, 20 odd years at Microsoft, and then it just said goose farmer, which I don't know if that was a gag or whether he'd actually found his true
Well,
calling.
I
But why
think
not?
we might start seeing that a lot in the next year or so. There'll be just a lot of dramatic exits to these things that they've always wanted to do, and they were slightly
Yeah.
forced into doing them. And I think that given the nature of today and our ability to kind of
But I mean,
income
I
generate,
just on that point, I've kind of had a good stab at being a fractional CMO, or at least kind of really exploring the area quite carefully and really trying to make it work. And actually, really, my conclusion is I don't think that's right for me.
right?
But actually, what I do know is if I do get to a stage in 5 years' time or something when my kids are at uni or whatever, I know which aspects of whatever you want to call it, a portfolio career, fractional interim, what have you, something that's not a big permanent job. I know what that would need to look like for me now,
Yeah, same.
because I properly, not just from reading a book, from like actually trying to do it,
Yeah.
and what I do and don't want that to look like, and when I'm what needs to be true when I do look at doing that. And it's I'd need to know exactly what I want to do. I'd need to have a better network. I'd probably need to not do it on my own. Um, but I wouldn't really have the time and space to think about and try that sort of stuff out if I'd been in Cazoo.
No.
So yeah, it hasn't earned me any money, but
No.
I've definitely learned a lot by trying out something completely different that I didn't think I'd ever do.
Was it the 10,000 hours thing?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm in the 10,000 hours process at the moment around a couple of things, but it feels like I'm in hour 10 of the 10,000 in
nice,
some of those things. But
nice.
no, and for anyone listening and for everyone listening, it's really important. I think, like I say, this thing might happen again in the future because, like I say,
Yeah,
it's circular and it'll come again. So I think preparing and looking at yourself and your career moving forward is we now have the time to do that. It's forced on us, but it's vital to do it. And I recommend everyone does it. And it might be, you know what, I just want to do this forever, and that's great too. And then that'll motivate you to even get back in and as soon as you can. But I think other people, yeah, look at all the alternatives because it's a big wide world. So get yourself out there.
yeah.
I
I
think
think so.
so, Lucas. With that, I think I'm going to wrap up, mate, because you're a busy guy. You've got lots going on. Even though one of the things I talk about with everyone privately or on these podcasts is just how busy it is to be out of work. It's crazy how much shit there is to do during the day.
Yeah,
I
you
can't go
just
diary for diary with my wife, but when she asked me to do something, I'm like, "Babe, I've got a lot on tomorrow. I don't
very
want me to do
busy.
that."
Yeah, no, you
Um,
do take time.
so look, clearly anybody listening to this who thinks, Lucas, why isn't he working with us? One question I'd have, Lucas, actually, finally, and sorry to put you on stop, would you ever go agency side?
Yeah, I think so. Look, I think I what I love is working with super smart, interesting people, and agencies are almost always full of very, very smart, interesting people. So that's what most appeals to me. Interestingly, actually, my very first job before I was at L'Oreal was agency side, and I quickly worked out what I didn't like about agency side was the bloody clients.
Yeah. You
Going
thought,
to
well,
say
you
to be
can't
a
beat them,
kind
join them.
person. Yeah. So yeah, no, I'd love to if it's the right agency doing
Right.
interesting stuff, and not wouldn't necessarily have to be creative or media. It could be strategy. I don't know what. Yeah, sure, definitely
Nice.
would
Well,
love
look,
to. And
the reason I ask is because I'm obviously 99% the agency side, and a lot of
yeah,
my network and recruiters are all at this side of the fence, as it were. And I've mentioned to a few of them I was speaking to you, and they were like, "No way! All right, cool. I can't wait to listen to that." So I needed to ask you because you might be inundated with agency
yeah,
folk
give me a
calling.
call, guys.
Yeah.
Worth a chat for sure.
All right. Well, look, Lucas, I can't thank you enough for your time. Appreciate it, and good luck with the search.
You too.
No. I thank you, and yeah, I can't wait to see what you do next. And definitely, I'll take you for lunch when I am working at an agency for sure.
Likewise. Yeah,
All right, mate.
fantastic.
Thank you, buddy. Have a good one.
Cheers, Jared.
No worries.
Thanks, mate.
Bye.